From the streets of the Hamptons, piece of the mansion. I've been on the mission, take the knowledge for ransom. Had to free my mind, get a little expansion. Heard the healer had to triple your chances. From the streets of the Hamptons, piece of the mansion. I've been on the mission, take the knowledge for ransom. Had to free my mind, get a little expansion. Heard the healer had to triple your chances.
All right, so welcome to the Hood the Healer Show. We're gonna stop counting episodes now. We're officially in business. What's up,
Yeah.
Truth? How you been?
I've been good. I'm doing good. I'm so happy to be here. So excited for this episode.
Me too. So we have Neda the Coach in the building this week. She is a life coach, a spiritual practitioner. She's got some workshops that she has popping off. I was just on the site and she failed to mention this to me. She's got like guides and stuff on there. So Neda, come on, hop in and tell us what all you got going on.
You said I got what on there?
So you got those guides and workbooks and stuff. You ain't tell me you had all that
Yeah,
happening.
yeah, absolutely. I like to surprise people a little bit, so I'm glad that you. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so I'm a spiritual mentor, and so I work as a spiritual healer. I'm a psychic medium. I'm a lover of Jesus. So basically, I use my spiritual connection to help people. But I also kind of, unlike other healers, is that I connect the mental health side, right? And I work in mental health. So I'm supervising the mental health clinicians who oversee mental health patients. And so I'm trauma informed. So I'm not a clinician, but I'm trauma informed. I have clinical hours and I bridge the spiritual side and the mental health side to help people find their gifts and then heal themselves. Because when they are having struggles in their life, they realize they have a block in some area, whether that be in their mental body, their spiritual body, their emotional body, or their physical body. And so when you clear or you don't clear one of those blocks, you realize there's disruption there. And so I basically give people tools to clear those blocks.
See, that's perfect. That leads right into what me and Truth was just literally talking about. You know, everybody has their little show notes and stuff. And the first note on mine is actually identifying trauma. So, what are some things that you've learned over your time and with what you do on how to help people like identify they actually are dealing with trauma? Because a lot of people don't even understand what trauma is.
Right. It's interesting because so I grew up in a household where my mom, she was mentally ill. And so, of course, she was dealing with a lot of trauma. And usually trauma spreads and affects other people and causes trauma in other people when there's nothing to control it or help. And so we all were navigating the remnants of not having a structured, parenting background or having a structured parent. So I would talk to my siblings like, okay, I think this is trauma. And they'll be like, oh, this is like, I don't have trauma. Like, and when you talk to people, especially in the communities of color too, I don't know if you've encountered this, people don't want to admit that they have trauma. Right. But oftentimes, like dealing with someone who had mental health issues and there wasn't support, dealing with somebody who was an alcoholic, right? Growing up when there was violence in the home, there's different forms of trauma that are circulating and it's hard not to have trauma, especially in the US because of all these different systems and structures of oppression, right? People don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit to it. So how do you know that you have trauma? I would say that people usually come to me when they realize that they have these repeating cycles in their life, right? For example, relationship cycles. They're like, okay, this relationship sucked, but I got into a new relationship and it still sucked. It's a different person, but I realized it's the same type of situation. Like this last person had an addiction issue. This next person has an addiction issue, right? And so they're like, okay, they start to ask like, what is it within me that is attracted to, not necessarily attracting, but is attracted to these certain types of people, right? And that leads them right to understanding that there's usually emotional trauma, emotional wounding within them that's just asking like, yo, can you learn this lesson? And they're trying to learn this lesson in the wrong way by engaging in these situations that are harmful to them, rather than taking a new perspective and moving forward so they can have healthier relationships. So I would say people who have these repeating cycles in their life that are harming them usually is connected to some type of emotional wounding, usually in their childhood.
Yeah, see, I actually resonate a lot with what you just said. Like, I'm writing this book, and in there, I'm talking about my mom's addictions, not only to drugs but bad relationships, and how it led me to perpetuate the cycle. But
Mhm.
it's funny. I just learned. a couple days ago in my personal therapy session that there's trauma and there is complex trauma.
Mhm.
So I'm familiar with the trauma aspect, but we get to this one part when I'm talking to my therapist, and
Mhm.
she goes, "Oh, you've never mentioned that before. That's complex trauma." And to me, I was like, "Oh, so now there's something even more wrong with me. I got complex trauma." So I'm just like, "All right, lady, what are we gonna do with this one?"
Right.
And she's like, you're slowly peeling back the layers, and that's why I'm bringing people like you to the show, because I realize even though I've been in therapy for 2 years, I just found out my complex trauma. I don't even have regular trauma, guys. I thought it was just regular, but here we are with this extra layers of it, because not only from what she was explaining is you have your layer of trauma. Like I had trauma from my mom being a drug addict, but then the complex trauma came in with the behaviors that came from her addiction. So severe trigger warning for anybody who has any problems with suicide. Stop the show now, because I'm gonna say something crazy. My mom slit her wrist in front of me when I was 11 years old on Mother's Day. There's a movie called Hillbilly Elegy, and
Mhm.
I was watching it, and in the movie, this lady does the same thing, and it triggered me. I hit the button and got up, and I'm pacing through my house, and I'm like, "Whoa, that was serious." So when I hopped in this conversation with my therapist, she goes, "Well, you've been dealing with your mom's drug issue, but you haven't been dealing with the symptoms that came from it. So that's why I'm talking about like this trauma stuff." So back to what you said, how do people, because a lot of people suppress it, how do they identify like what in their childhood triggered that trauma, like that traumatic experience?
Without suppressing it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You know, usually emotional trauma is complex, right? It usually is multi-level. For example, if you're dealing with enmeshment trauma, right? So if you had a parent who wasn't able to provide their parently duties, right, it's usually going to lead to some type of enmeshment trauma because children are now having to step up in roles that they usually wouldn't have to step up in, right? If you're a child, you need nurture, you need structure, but then as a parent, you can't provide that. So now I have to act like a parent sometimes. Now I have to tell you, Mom, you probably shouldn't be doing that, or let me step up, let me cook this time, or let me work to provide for the family, right? And so that is a form of complex trauma in itself, right? And so I used to have this friend, not necessarily a client, but she told me, every time I wash dishes, I start humming. Right. And she was like, I just started humming because she realized that as a child, she had to step into certain roles, like really, really young, to like do certain duties. Like, yeah, you do chores as a child, but she had to do more. Right. And the way she got through that was just humming. Right. So that was already kind of a form of dissociation from that trauma. And that helped her get through it. Right. So at some point in time, if someone doesn't want to face something, they're not going to face it. Right. You could tell somebody, okay, you have trauma, and they won't receive it. Right. And that's kind of why I think some therapists need to be trauma informed, and not just trauma informed because, like, what is that? Like, some therapists will come to you and they're like, oh, I'm trauma informed, but they never talked to a Black person before, or a person of color, or a person who's dealt with different types of complex trauma. And so they'll throw things on you and they don't know how to approach it. And you're like, what is this? I don't have trauma. Or you're just not going to be receptive to it. But when people are ready to be receptive to it, they will. Right. So if they're disconnected from it and they're not ready to face their triggers, they won't. But usually it comes a point in time when they realize that their behaviors are just harmful to them. Right. They get tired. They get tired of being hurt in relationships. They get tired of being isolated. They get tired of not having true love. They get tired of not connecting with people. And then that's when they really start to look within. They have, what do you call it? The dark night of the soul, right? Shit is just blowing up. Can I cuss? I'm sorry.
You
It's
can.
okay. It's all right. I've let you slip, so
Stuff is just blowing up in their life, and they realize, okay, I need to make a change, right? And so when they reach that point of darkness, then they're able to see the light, and then they're able to face their triggers. So I feel like it just happens within themselves, right? So they're going to be dissociated from it for a while. They're going to disconnect from it. They're going to have triggers, but eventually when they get tired, that's when they open up, and that's when you can kind of reach them.
and for anybody listening, what she just said is absolutely true. That's how we arrived here, even to this show. Is I got tired of my own shit, guys. I really did. I got tired of being toxic, being unhappy, And it all started with self accountability. I
Right.
realized like nobody else controls me. So if anybody can fix me, it's gonna be me. It's
Mhm.
truth. You got something to say? I see you over
Yeah,
there.
yeah, like even so, what you just said, like we always look for outside sources to like fix us, but these outside sources is just the guide to fixing ourselves. Like that's how we got to look at it. Like just like what you do and the work that you do, you giving people the tools to actually do the work,
Mhm.
and but I think sometimes we as individuals, we look for people to fix our problem, and then and with that we don't actually get to the destination because we're looking outside, but it's an inside job. The people on the outside is going to give you the tools and provide you the right steps in order to do this thing for yourself. And that's basically what I wanted to add on top of what you just said.
Most definitely. Yeah. Yeah, because like, I'm if I'm not ready to face something, I'm not going to be receptive to it.
Right.
If I don't trust you, I'm not going to be receptive to it. It's so many different reasons. Because at the end of the day, it's in certain situations where we have trauma, we are victims. And
Yeah.
the thing about trauma is that it freezes us in time, right? Trauma freezes
Mhm.
us. Like you can have something happen 30 years ago, and then something triggers you, and your body literally gets back into a space of where it was 30 years ago. Okay.
Mhm.
And now you're reliving that trauma all over again. So you feel like a victim in that moment, even though it may not be happening again. I'm not going to be receptive to you. I'm not going to be receptive to your tools. And so it just takes time. It takes patience, and just kind of peeling away the layers. And again, like you said, get tired of your own shit, and then that's when you're able to kind of have some work done.
Yeah. Do you think that um trauma is like an unconscious thing, that is something that people are not actually conscious of when they're actually dealing with these traumas, or is it something that somebody have to tell them, like you had a traumatic situation and this is the reason why things are the way they are? Do you believe that's the
Mhm.
case,
Do
or is
I
it something
think
that you just already know?
like like can is it possible for someone to understand that they have trauma without somebody telling them?
Yes.
Absolutely. I think, like these are just like labels that the world gave us to understand something deeper.
Mhm.
But it's, like when something's not going right, you realize something's wrong, right? And so we call that trauma, right? But trauma is complex, not in the form of complex trauma, but it's just like there's so many different aspects of trauma, right? So like that's why I believe in tying the mind, the body, the emotions, and the spirit. I believe we have four main bodies, right? And so like yeah, there's a mental health aspect, the brain aspect, but there's also like what's happening to you physically, right? So some people, for example, let's say their trauma is mostly like they realize it because something's happening mentally, right? Their thoughts are negative, or they're having flashbacks, they have PTSD, versus somebody who just feels anxious all of the time. They don't necessarily have negative thoughts. They're just anxious all the time. Maybe they feel frozen. They don't want to move, right? That's something that's a little bit harder for them to catch sometimes. They don't realize that that could be because of a trauma. So I think it really
Mm,
depends on the type of trauma and how it affects your body individually. Yeah.
yes, that
Did I
makes a
answer
whole
your
lot of
question? I
sense.
don't know if I answered your question.
No, 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 you answered my question and more, because
Okay.
because they're like, when I think about trauma, I mainly only think about the physical aspect of it. Like you just said, as far as like a person afraid to move forward, they feel stagnant. That's like
Mhm.
more of a physical thing. It can be a mental too, but mainly
Mhm.
that's like a physical thing. And then it may be tied to, you know, parents moving around all the time and they never really had a chance to really set in a town and meet friends and different things like that.
Mhm.
So now when they're on their own and they love the city that they're in, and it's like, okay, they may feel like, okay, I want to move, but I don't want to move now. And the reason why you don't want to move is because you don't want to have that feeling of, when I
Mhm.
was younger, I was moving around and I never really had a chance to have
Mhm.
friends. So even if everything is telling you to move to California for that job, you don't want to do it because you don't want to attach yourself to that feeling of the past, which that can be more physical. But there is a spiritual, a mental side of things too. Like for me personally, this they call this a phobia, but it may be a traumatic thing too. Now that I'm seeing, this conversation go the way it goes, I'm understanding that this may be a trauma too. Like one of my phobias is I'm afraid to ride elevators. It's one of my
Mhm.
phobias.
I
You're
Mm.
saw
not
you
going.
post about that. I did. I
Yeah,
saw
yeah,
you
yeah,
post
yeah,
about that.
yeah. If you a family member of mine and you live above 10 flights, I won't visit you. Like, come holler at me. Come to my apartment. We can meet at a restaurant. But I am not going past the 10th floor. I'll walk 10 flights. I'll walk up
Mhm.
10 flights. You know what I'm saying? But if you live on 15 and 20, if you're in the projects and you live on the 30th floor, I would never visit you.
I got a question though. Is that because you're from New York and 9/11 happened?
No,
Mm.
no, no, no. But what happened was I had got stuck in the elevator when I was young,
Okay.
and
Mm.
I was in that elevator for about 40 minutes, and it was a summer day, and it was so hot, and it was crowded. I was stuck with a lot of people, and that feeling of just like that claustrophobic feeling of like telling myself that I can't breathe. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I never wanted to experience that again. And then another time, I actually tried to conquer my fears. Right, so
Mhm.
my grandmother lived on the 8th floor in Staten Island. She lived in Stapleton Projects. So I said, you know what? I'm going to conquer my fears. And that whole summer I was there, I was riding the elevator up and down, and I got a little comfortable. And then this one day, I'm like, Grandma, I'm gonna go to the store. It's like, okay, I get in the elevator, we riding, and then if it didn't feel like it stopped, but things just got still for me, like in my mind, and I'm like, I'm stuck. Then I realized I was stuck and I started going crazy in the elevator. So it brought back up that feeling of when I got stuck for 40
Right.
minutes. Then when I got out of there, I told myself I would never ride an elevator. I do ride commercial elevators though. It feels a little bit more safer because I know that the technicians check it more frequently. So like I ride like a hospital elevator, commercial buildings that got like studios and stuff. I ride those, but like regular like residential buildings, I would never ride those elevators. And they call it like no, they say it's a elevator or what kind of phobia it is. They say it's a phobia, but now I'm seeing that can probably be a traumatic or trauma situation as well. So I
Right,
don't know.
right. You gave yourself your own exposure therapy though when you go on the elevators anyway.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
exposure therapy is like when you, like for example, like OCD people, they don't want to touch doorknobs, right? So a form of exposure would be like, okay, touch it just for a second, just for a little
yeah,
bit. And I was like, this who
yeah.
invented this? This is horrible. Like,
Yeah, I actually seen a video of those type of specialists where they'll ride like even on the elevator side of things, they'll ride the elevator up and down with you and ask you how you feeling and
mhm,
different things like that. But I told myself, man, I'm not gonna even chance that. I'm just never getting on the elevator.
right. I ain't mad at you. I get it.
You know, it's funny that you say that though. I never really looked at trauma responses in that manner. Uh
Mhm.
Really, I'm just starting to identify all my trauma responses myself. But after my mom died and in the manner that she did die, I feel like my brain completely shifted after I was told. Like if they would have did a brain scan 10 minutes before and 20 minutes after, there was a noticeable like shift in the pattern of the way I thought. I was like in a cloud of a fog. I was just like on autopilot for 3 years. I'm just snapping into reality now. So trauma really does make your brain respond in different manners.
Mhm.
What kind of like just a question to you when it comes to trauma, like for the like clients that you assist, is it like is the process of them actually like recovering or regaining their identity and their life back from the traumatic situation? Is the process like always in the same range, like as far as them recovering from it, or or is it like this person may take 2 years in order for them to get back to themselves? This person may take 1 year, or is it like a certain period where most like 85% of the people recover in this time frame? Like, is it always different, or is it like a high
Mhm.
percentage of people actually recovering around the same time?
I think it depends on like if it's like for my spiritual mentoring clients versus the clients that I work directly in mental health in the psychology field. In the psychology field, I don't use much of a spiritual modality because the institutions and stuff like that. They usually have a month turnaround, but that's like intensive therapy, and it depends on the individual and what they're navigating, what type of mental um, health issue they're navigating. Some people end up staying for past a month, 2 months, 3 months, but usually people kind of feel better after a month, right? And like trauma is it's interesting because it's like, you know, we're all on this journey to heal. We're all healing, right? It's just about giving people the tools so they can kind of navigate each day, and have more control, right? So like we help the people in like the mental health institution, like when they feel like they lost control, like I can't get up, I can't do my daily activities. So after a month, like we give them the tools, they can do it, right? And then the healing from there is lifelong, right? But it's just about getting people to that step of like being able to like take control of their life. In the spiritual aspect, I get more specific. Like I usually, like right now I'm working with like empaths. And so that's more about like their relationships with protecting their energy. And so a lot of their trauma comes from like codependency, even though I don't like the word, but it's like, they cannot connect to people without getting completely drained. And so a lot of times they don't realize like what's draining them, and they'll Google like, how do I protect my energy? So they'll use these spiritual tools like, oh, cover myself in white light, use this protection spell, use crystals. Like I use crystals, but they realize it doesn't work. Right. And so a lot of them start to realize it's because of the trauma that they have from their childhood wounding, and they haven't resolved that trauma. So now they're just super receptive to all the energy around them because they've been doing that since childhood to heal themselves, right? So something like that takes a little bit longer to heal. But in my work, I more so give them the tools to actually understand and identify where that's coming from so they can stop pulling in all that extra energy, right? So I would say the people who I work with learn how to shield themselves so they can navigate through life. But it's a lifelong process. Like I can't really put a time frame on it. It's just, I think the focus is not so much like, okay, I need to be healed. It's more so I need to know that I can get the tools and then use the tools to do the journey of healing myself and have more control in my life.
Because it is a journey. We have to look at it as a journey, and most times people look at it like this is something that I can overcome in a day or a month or a year. And I'm glad that you said that, so the people that's actually tuned in and watching this, they can know that this is a lifetime journey and not something that you just handle and put in a box and close it and lock it in a month or a year or 2 years or 5 years. This is something that you got to be doing actively. So I thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like, I kind of side eye people sometimes when they're like, "I've healed my trauma," like, and like that does happen. It does happen. Like, there's some things that I can say like doesn't bother me anymore. Or, like I don't blank out anymore. Like I used to just blank out about some stuff. Like it was too much for me to handle. And I can say I've healed that, but it's just there's something kind of fake about it. Like it's like, okay, you healed that trauma, but 2020 happened. Were you around? Like that was pretty traumatic. So like it is a journey because I think it's hard not to navigate society without experiencing something that's traumatic, right? And people who are just kind of like, oh, everything's perfect, like I side eye them because it's just like, are you aware of what's happening in the world right now, right? So I think like you said, and like we both were saying, like as long as you just have the tools and you know how to use those tools so that you can get by day to day and have control over your life, and you know how to navigate these challenges, I think that's more important than like, let me just fix everything in this moment.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I really love that. That
Yeah.
that that kind of helped me in my sense, because even on the empath side of things, sometimes it's like it's like a self-sacrificial type of approach when you like an empath. It's like you giving so much of yourself, you know what I'm saying, just to make sure everything is okay, and you're attracting these different energies because you're engaging with so many different people. And empaths, like, they can actually feel what everybody's going through and their moods and everything like that. And like I look at empaths like somewhat like light workers without, and sometimes they don't even know that, because
Mhm.
they spend this time trying to like help people and make everybody happy, and then at the end of it they're not doing that for themselves. So that's why it's important, like the work that you do is really important.
Word.
Yo, it's funny. I'm literally in therapy, and my therapist told me my biggest issue is I have what? How did she phrase that? Basically, I want to save people. What was that? What's that syndrome called where you always got to save people?
uh which one? I don't know. It's a couple.
She was telling me because they always say we develop the traits that would have saved our parents.
Right.
So so I guess I have all the traits that are supposed to be to save somebody who was sexually abused and addicted to drugs. So I'm always you mentioned that we attract partners like that. So I seem to attract partners who have the same issues my mother had because
I think we're attracted to, not attract, though. Not to cut you off, though, because the reason I'm careful about that is like, I remember seeing this argument.
that's
There's
self-accountability. No, you're right. But I didn't realize like a lot of times I don't realize they have those addictions or those issues. I look past people's flaws. I try to see people for who they are. And I found that some people have been good enough to just get that over my head until it's a little too late.
absolutely.
Yeah, so like I want you to elaborate a little bit on that. What you just said, like you don't want it to be confused. Like you're not attracting those people you are attracted to.
Yeah,
Like
please keep
like
going.
yeah, elaborate on that a little bit. Yeah.
Do I have to? No, I'm just kidding. No.
That's what you're here for. Come on.
Well, I think it's both. I think I believe in the law of attraction. I believe we're constantly attracting things to us, and to a certain extent, we are attracting certain people to us. But I mean, like, if you're a good person, like, the law of attraction is supposed to work like attracts like. So why is it that good people also attract energy vampires? Like, what's that about, right? So we are attracting people to us, but also sometimes people are just attracted to us because of our light, right? So if you are a light worker, you're talking about light workers, and you're a light worker, I'm pretty sure you both are, I can see your light. Then people are gonna want to drain that. So, but what we can pinpoint though is that what you allow to take place, now that's important, right? So whether you attracted it or they're attracted to you, is this still going on, right? So what about you are attracted in that situation where you're not cutting it off? That's why I like to make that distinction, because I can't say that you attract everybody, but I could say that, like, okay, if you're allowing this to go on without stopping it, then what about you is attracted to that?
Savior complex. That's what it was. My savior complex is what is attracted to that. I'm always
Yeah.
trying to save people from their own choices.
But you're absolutely right though, because you're not going to eat a meal that you don't like it. You're going to push it to the side, right? So
Right.
you're only going to dive into the thing that you actually like and attracted to. So that question that you asked, like, if you don't like this, why? Or if you're not attracted to this thing, why aren't you cutting it off? And that makes a lot of sense when you put it in that perspective. It's true, you know. So a lot of times people say, I'm not attracted to this, so I'll just attract hurt people. I hear that a lot. Like all I do is attract hurt people. In that sense, why are you still in this situation if that's something that you don't want to attract, or you don't, or something that you're not attracted to? But I think it's the self evaluation part that a lot of people actually miss. Like they don't self evaluate. They don't ask themselves like, I'm in this situation. Why am I here? You know, like why am I attracting these type of people? Why am I attracted to these type of people? And when you discover the answer, a lot of the times you find out you have some of those traits within yourself, and you haven't looked in the you haven't looked in the mirror, and you're like, wow, like I do embody some of these behaviors. So it's back to that like attract like type thing that you just mentioned before. And it's just amazing how this whole thing works when you think about it, like how the mind works, how you know relationships are built, how they are formed, and how you even discover the things that you actually like and dislike. It's when you look at it from the outside, it's a amazing thing because it gives you the opportunity to actually grow from the things that you no longer want to be a part of, the things that you no longer want to entertain. You have the opportunity to grow from that, and I think that's an amazing thing. We look at it like a negative, but it can be a positive as well.
Absolutely.
One of the biggest things I learned on the spiritual side of things is relationships are mirrors. We're mirroring each other. So that's why we attract what we attract, because we attract where we're at in life in that moment. So if we're in a negative place, we're gonna be receptive to negative energy, because old saying, misery loves company. So that's how we allow that cycle to keep happening right there. That's what I've learned. So
Mm-hmm.
What's your thought of people actually suppressing their feelings instead of actually dealing with them? Like I was one of those people that you know if I'm sad, I would ignore the fact that I am sad. You know what I'm saying? Because I looked at that emotion as a negative. Like you're not ever supposed to be sad.
Yeah, like that's
And then
weakness.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it's a weakness. And now I'm starting to feel like now I'm starting to look at it as something that I need to actually deal with and
Mhm.
release. What's your thoughts on that? Like people that actually suppress those feelings and ignore it, or make themselves believe that that feeling is not something that they are feeling at the moment.
I mean, initially, just not to beat themselves up about it. Uh, I mean, when you were suppressing it, did you know you were suppressing it, or did somebody have to like tell you?
I now I knew because like I looked at it as something as being like as something like you're not supposed to feel that way or it's negative. Like you should always be
Mhm.
happy. You should always be joyful and grateful. Because this is what people tell you. So to answer your question, yes, in a sense,
Mhm.
people tell me that because they'd say you gotta be grateful, you gotta be happy, you gotta be this, you gotta be that. You gotta move off your head. Why you are sad at the moment? Like it's people out there that's hungry in Africa and you got food on the table. So you
Mhm.
shouldn't feel like this. So yes, in a sense, people did tell me that. So I always kind of reject when I do feel sad. I like you said, I beat myself up about it because what I've been told as a child, you got this food, you better eat your collard greens because there's people in Africa starving. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So you better
Mhm.
be grateful that you're eating. So growing up, I always had it in my mind that anger, sadness, and these or low vibrating frequencies is bad. You know what I'm saying? But
Mhm.
what I know to believe by you ignoring these emotions, it can like make relationships kind of awkward, and
Mhm.
it can kind of make you insensitive to like
Mhm.
your partner and friendships. And when a friend might be coming to you to like vent and you're looking at them like saying the same things your mom said, like,
Right.
well, you should be happy that you got somebody, at least your partner is working and bringing in income and helping you with this. Like, why are you complaining about that? And then
Mhm.
now they're looking at me as an insensitive person. But I am insensitive at the moment because of the things that have been told to me. So like people is going to actually be watching this episode. So, and I'm pretty sure there's people out there that's dealing with the same thing. What would you tell somebody like that?
An ambulance would be going by. I
That's all right. They gonna tell somebody. It's cool. It's cool.
I would tell them is again is to be patient with themselves, not to beat themselves up, because a lot of times when people come to me with certain behaviors, they're like, okay, I don't like that I do this, but I know that I do this. Uh, Go back to asking yourself, like, what's the underlying need, like, and what are you protecting yourself from, right? It's a safety mechanism. It's a protective mechanism. Like, you couldn't speak up about certain things in your childhood or you'd be reprimanded, right? And so when that happens really young, your parents are like gods, right? So like, okay, no, like, I don't want that to happen. And then you grow up and then like you still kind of have those mechanisms, like not like that, but like you still have those mechanisms. Like, I dealt with the exact same thing. You don't want to speak up. But so I went through the same thing actually. I was reprimanded for crying, or not only was I reprimanded for crying, just no one was there. And I remember being really young. I was like 8 years old, and I think I poured milk or something, and I was crying because I didn't get what I wanted, and nobody paid attention to me. Right. And so I remember just being on the floor and crying, and I heard myself crying, and I was just like, damn, is that me? And I just stopped. Right. Nobody came to say, are you okay? What's going on? Like, I just had to kind of deal with certain things on my own without any nurture and without structure sometimes. So it just shut me down. And I grew up thinking, no one's gonna rescue you, and you should rescue yourself, of course, but like no one's gonna be there for you. No one's gonna care if you speak, no one's gonna care if you have a need, no one's gonna care if you are hurt. And so I was going through relationships trying to get close to people, but I was unable to get close to people because I didn't know how to express my emotions, and I didn't feel safe enough to express my emotions. And so I beat myself up a lot because I wasn't able to do that, and people just felt disconnected from me. And so I realized that I had to learn how to communicate my needs, no matter how horrible it felt. And once I finally learned how to communicate my needs, then I had to learn how to find the right people to communicate my needs to, because if you communicate your needs to the wrong people, then they can make you feel worse. That could be re-traumatizing. Okay, you open up, okay, this hurt me, I need this, and then they shut you down, or they're not receptive, or they're rude, and then that I went through like a re-traumatization period. But it was the opening up and going through the pain that allowed me to learn, like, all right, I deserve somebody who can reciprocate. I deserve somebody who can create a safe space with me so that I can communicate my needs, so there can be a reciprocal us communicating our needs. What was your question?
So basically that you answered it. I basically was asking like what would you tell somebody out there that look at the quote unquote negative emotions like sadness and anger,
Mm-hmm.
they look at it as negative, and what would you tell a person that is rejecting those different emotions because they feel like they shouldn't feel those things? But
Yeah.
one of the things you said is that they shouldn't beat themselves up about feeling that way. So that's one of the answers that you gave. I
and
don't know if
and
you have
and
I
and look
don't
at
know if
the
you have any more.
and look at the underlying need, and look at the underlying need, instead of beating yourself up about the behavior. Ask yourself, okay, what need am I trying to get served here? And what are, like, am I protecting myself, and what am I protecting myself from?
All right.
Yeah.
So you hear that, viewers? Don't beat yourself up about whatever you're feeling. And me and Kristy, we always talk about these different emotions, and one of the things that I always say is um allow yourself to feel those things, you know, and like you said, ask yourself the question: what am I trying to like serve? What am I trying to serve or discover in this emotion? And then allowing yourself to actually release those things. So for me, I like to release my whatever sadness or anger through art. I love music. I love creating. I will go grab magazines and cut out my favorite prints inside those magazines and put them on a vision board. And like I have to create in order to like shift that energy to like a more happier one or exciting feeling. The thrill of recording makes me happy. I'm always amped to like just record something new or write a new song. I love like production. I love beats. So like even more than being a rapper, just listening to the instrumentals excites me because I understand the process of making that beat. So it kind of like occupies my mind from being like sad or angry when actually creating. So like I was saying, I don't know if you agree, if you are feeling that type of way, maybe tap into something that you enjoy in hopes that that actually shifts that mood and that feeling.
So I want to just tap into what you both said. Um, my first go around, I did therapy mixed with anger management, and we called it the toolbox. We literally made me a toolbox, a mental toolbox, where depending on what emotion I felt, I could go in there and grab my tool because I didn't understand my emotions. I'm probably on the autism spectrum. I've never been diagnosed, but I know, I've accepted it. I'm different. The way I think, the way I operate, I'm completely different than most people that I've ever met in my life. And so I know that you have to find what works for you. So for a lot of people, they need to find their tools, just like Truth was saying and asking the questions about how can you give people advice type of thing. So you take what advice works for you and start building a toolbox, because you have to be aware of your triggers. Once you can start learning your triggers, then you can start identifying which tool to use and help. If you have a nail, you know to get a hammer. If you have a screw, you know to get a screwdriver. But what kind of screw do you have? Do you need a flathead, a Phillips, or do you need one of them little custom stars that you got to go all the way to the hardware store and get? And that's your therapist. Sometimes you got to go get your therapist to deal with that one. So start building a toolbox. Take the bits and pieces like that Netta just said, the things that Truth's saying. We're going to have more guests to do this with, but take this and start building yourself a toolbox. If you're not ready to go to therapy and you're just looking to work on it on your own, get you a notebook, write these things down, and really just one step at a time identify your triggers. As I previously mentioned, I had an unidentified trigger that really just caught up with me this last week. Seeing that lady do that in that movie really messed me up. I didn't realize what a trigger suicide was for me. But when I sat down, like I didn't even talk to my therapist about this a couple of days ago. My grandfather committed suicide, and I didn't think about that. The only man that I know as my like he wasn't my biological, but that's like I got pictures of this man holding me at a month old. When I was 7.5, 8 years old, they told me the story of this man playing Russian roulette and how it ended.
Mm.
And then a year and a half later, I witnessed my mom trying to take her life. And subconsciously, I didn't realize what that foundation was laying for me. So when we talk about identifying your childhood triggers, I really I want y'all to look back at those kind of things that you've pushed so far behind that sometimes you forget about them. Because honestly, I really forgot that's how he died. I just know now he's dead, but it was so traumatic. I tried to cover it up because I didn't want to think about that experience. So, all right, y'all can have it back.
No, no, I thank you for sharing that. 'Cause like a lot of us do that, right? We push things so far to the back. Like it could even be, in I share a story. It could be like me being in elementary school or middle school and getting your being rejected for the first time by a girl you like. You know what I'm saying? And you pushing that so far to the back, and then it's like now every girl you meet, you deal with them differently because you're afraid of this rejection.
Right.
And then you're like, why, I have to hit her first and run before I can actually tell her I like her. Like, why am I doing this? You know what I'm saying? Or why I gotta go in front of her and act like the macho man. Why am I doing this instead of saying, you know what? Hey, I think you pretty dope. I like how you are social, and I like that you into sports like I am. Instead of doing all those things, you just say you with your homeboys, you boasting and everything, and you doing these things because you like this girl, but you're not approaching them, and it's because you put that feeling so far back of rejection, and
Mm-hmm.
you act out in certain other ways, instead of just dealing with that. Like, you know what? I got rejected. Yeah, it hurt, but I have to make sure that I get myself back to this place of confidence so I can
Mhm.
start approaching a female like a human being instead of just like a thug or monkeying around and everything like that. So like that was actually a true story. Like when I got to like high school, like I would do certain things to get a female's attention
Mm-hmm.
because that I was afraid of being rejected. But I put that so far back. I'm like, I forgot that I got rejected. Like how you said, I forgot until I sat back, and because this one girl told me, she like, yo, you don't gotta do that because just to show me that you like me. Like, and I'm like,
Wait, what would you do? I'm so curious.
yeah, like I'm not sure exactly what it was. I think I probably like, like put a foot out and tripped her or something like that. Like it probably was something along those lines. Like she's walking by or something, and I'm like, but like I'm doing these things because like I like her and I don't want to tell her this. So I just want to try to engage with her any way I can, just
Mm-hmm.
to start a conversation or to make her say, hey, why you do that? And I'm like, hey, and whatever the case. But you like this person, so you're doing these little things, but you're not saying it. So when she said that, I went home and it's just like I think about it like, why am I acting out these ways? It's like, oh wow, yeah, I'm afraid of rejection. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I'm afraid to hear I'm not interested in you, or maybe another time. I'm afraid to hear that.
A
So
lot of us are. A lot of people
yeah,
are.
yeah, yes, word. So and speaking of that, social media had made it so easy for people that's afraid of rejection because now they can just send a message real quick, boom, boom, boom. And if a person don't say what you like, you're like, oh well, they're already all
Right?
the way somewhere else. So
Why does
whatever they
somebody else do?
it's all right, it's all good, it's all good. And but to piggyback off of that, do you believe, like we're gonna get off of the topic a little bit just to make it a little fun? Do you believe that social media
Uh-huh.
made it easier for somebody to engage with somebody they like, opposed to actually walking up to them in the street and saying something to them? That's still aligned with what you do anyway, right? Because it's still psychological a little bit in a sense. So it's just like, do you feel like a lot of people that's afraid of speaking to somebody face to face or in person,
Mhm.
do you think they are more prone to do it on social media because of their fear of doing it human interaction?
I think it definitely depends on the individual, but I mean, social media is interesting. Like social media, people treat social media like their living rooms. If you say the wrong thing, the people get really offended. Then they gonna subtweet you. They gonna post something about you on their page, or like it's just people just kind of be loud and out on social media. So I think to a certain extent, people are a little bit more comfortable with like approaching people on social media. Is it effective? I don't know, because I also saw, I know it's a meme, but this meme was like, "Yo, he really just DM me when he could have just said it in person." you know, you
Seen
know,
that. Seen
So
that.
it's just like I don't know how. I think a lot of connections do happen online, but I also think it can kind of take away like the authenticity of something,
Yeah.
because you don't really know who someone is until you meet them in person.
That's true. I actually seen, like you said, I seen that meme before, and I actually went through that before too. Like, I seen somebody at a cookout that I thought was my friend on Facebook, but I wasn't sure. Like, I wasn't sure. Like, I think I got this person as a Facebook friend, but I didn't say nothing to that person. I just kept doing my thing. There's like a big cookout, whatever the case. They have a lot of those in Harlem, and then when I get home, I see a message on Facebook. Hey, I think I saw you in at the cookout, and I'm like, if you were sure it was me, I know you sure it was me because you DM me. So why you didn't say anything? Like you could have just said hi or something. Like you know what I'm saying?
You
So
know, I
Profile
had
picture.
that at the time.
like you really took the time to say all the time and say, yo, I see you walking across the street. That's kind of creepy right there. Like, oh, I see you coming down Lenox Avenue, or I just saw you walking McDonald's. You just come holler at me, say what's up. Like,
Right,
all
right,
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 cool. Like, I'm not gonna bite you. It's weird. Social media is weird.
right.
I think social media allows people to really hide, honestly.
Mm.
I think in one aspect, it does give the introvert the, what is the word? I don't know, the tenacity to go ahead and shoot that shot. But on another hand, it allows people to really just hide from who they really are because they don't have to deal with their insecurities by sending that message through a DM. Like
Mm.
you were speaking on that fear of rejection, you can minimalize that fear by hiding behind that DM instead of doing that face to face interaction. And I've noticed that a lot. I'm 32. I know Truth, you're like a year older than me. Netta, I'm not sure what age you are, but I'm literally the first generation of the internet. We were the AOL kids. I
Yeah.
literally ran AOL. We made LOL and BRB and the smiley
Yeah.
faces. We are the reason these kids have emojis now. It was us. We did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I noticed when I was younger, it was much easier to have one-on-one interactions and conversations with people. But when you go outside and you walk down the street, everybody's like this. It's making it
Mm.
harder. And there's like that boundary, like you don't even want to pull people from their phone because you don't even know what they're doing. So I think that slows down our engagement with people because we're so like you could be sitting in the same room or the same house and people will text each other. And it's
Mm.
like, why didn't you just look up and say it? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found that happen in my previous relationship. My ex would be upstairs, I would be downstairs, and instead of her just walking down the stairs and being like, "Hey, can you come upstairs?" she would send some weird message that would draw me away from my work just to get my attention instead of being straight on like, "Hey, I want some time with you." It would be, "Oh, there's this issue," and then I would come and it would literally be like nothing. It'd be a sock on the floor, and I'd be like, "So you made up a problem to get my attention and it's just a sock on the floor?"
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
why didn't you just say you wanted to engage with me? And I think social media has helped like really perpetuate that problem. A lot
Yeah.
of people are scared to interact with each other. And
Hmm.
I saw this meme the other day and it really hit me. It said we ignore each other to get each other's attention.
Mm.
Oh wow.
That,
Mm.
why?
Why?
Why do we do that? Yeah, and it's true. The human interaction, part of things has been like a foreign language. which in my opinion, like at the dinner table, you see everybody with their phones in their hands, like like. But when I was coming up, like we actually had conversation, like, how was school and what was your day like? Like that was like the thing. Like we couldn't eat in the living room. Like come to the table. That was
Mhm.
me growing up. Like my mom, yeah, we at the table and we're gonna talk about each other day. And now these days, like especially like I have kids now, I see like no, they rather have a phone or sometimes much rather just want to skip dinner at that moment because they playing Fortnite or what I'm saying, or on their iPads watching YouTube. And my son, he lives in a different place than I live at. We don't live in the same home. So a lot of times I want to FaceTime him and call him and different things like that. And I call him and I be like, hey, how you doing? And he'll be stuck for a while. And I'm like, you playing that game? You're like, yeah, I'm playing a game. I'm like, could you put the game down for at least like 2 3 minutes so I could talk to you and see how you doing? Because everything is gonna be good, good,
Right.
good, like a robot. And it's like social media and this new technology is turning people into like human robots in a sense. And
Yeah.
it
It's
could be
bittersweet.
heartbreaking. It could be. It is bittersweet because technology is an amazing thing. This is why we here. We actually in different places, but having this conversation. Technology is amazing, but it goes back to what you were saying about those tools. Like it's like learning how to actually use those tools as well. And with social media and the internet, we have to know how to use it
Yeah.
because it can even build you up or it could break you down. A
Yeah.
lot of people they base their life off of what they see on social media. Like if they see the next person on vacation all the time, flashing money, and with the finest man or the finest woman, and they don't have that, then that puts them in a place of feeling depressed and sad because it's like, wow, everybody is lit. Everybody's in Miami right now doing what they doing, and they jumping off of the boats and they on speed boats and the best restaurants, but I'm here and I'm not doing all these things, and it's like, what's wrong with me? And they internalize those things, and social media has done that to a lot of people. Like I know people personally, they will go broke to look like the person that's have that lit life, but then that person that have that lit life may be putting on a show as well. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? The money might be prop money. The Rolex might be fake. It might have the TikTok to it. You know what I'm saying?
Have you seen those images going around? I don't know if it was on the shade room, but it was like people taking pictures in jets, but then they zoomed out and they realized it wasn't really a private jet. It was like a studio that you could rent out that looked like a
Yeah,
jet.
I seen that. It reminded me of the Bow Wow challenge. I don't know if you ever remember that from years ago.
Yeah,
Word.
exactly.
You know what I'm saying? But it's easier to like portray a certain lifestyle when you can rent things and take a picture for the day in that Ferrari. You may be paying like $50 an hour, $60 an hour. They say, you know what, I'm gonna spend 3 hours with this Ferrari just to take pictures, and let the owner come pick it up. But that also takes a toll on people mentally. And I'm one of those people that I'm not a person that's, I would say, materialistic. Like I like the juice of life. I like to be able to have conversation, talk about, anything. I like walks in the park. I love making smoothies. I love health and wellness. Like it's just other things that has more value to me than those things. So it doesn't really affect me much. But I
Hmm.
have people in my family that it really affects them. Like, and it really takes a toll on them. Or even with support, like we all do different things. I know people that do music. Like in my case, I do music, and I have people in my family that may not get as much support as I'm getting, so they will feel a way towards me because I'm getting a certain amount of support or a
Mm.
certain kind of support, and they not. And I'm like, but what did I do to you personally? Like, but they looking at it like, oh, like you think you the ish or you think you that. So some people actually look at situation and create these scenarios in their head that really isn't what it appears to be. Like,
And for real truth, everything you just said to me sounds like our main topic here at hand, unhealed
yeah,
trauma. Like
yeah,
literally, these things all stem back from something that happened as a kid. if somebody's jealous because you're getting more support, that sounds like they had an unsupportive parent. Like,
Mhm.
Mm.
really. So to me, it really just looks like a reflection in childhood. A lot of your adult problems, if you look at yourself as a kid, you'll find the root of where that problem came from. And that's just speaking as somebody who's growing through it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. That's and you make a good point. And also, like you said before, the accountability part of things. Because a lot of the times, we point the finger when we going through something instead of just saying, you know what, let's look inward and see what this problem actually is. What's the root of this problem? And that's what that's about. And but like you said, it takes time. It's a life journey. Like it's something that you consistently have to work on. Like we all want to be overcomers, right? But when we are granted the opportunity to overcome something, we fold. So it's like we have to make a decision. Like, do you want to be an overcomer, or do you want to be somebody that run away and don't want to, face your problem or issue head on? I don't like to call them problems. I just like to call them like opportunities, because everything is an opportunity. Opportunity to grow, opportunity to
Mhm.
learn. So I don't like to call them problems, but we have to get to a point in our life where we hold ourselves accountable for the things that goes on in our life. Like we can't continue to say my baby mama is this or my baby mama is that. Like that was once somebody that you was attracted to, that was once somebody that you loved. So
Mhm.
and I'm just saying these things because this is stuff I see on social media. Like I see a lot of like ranting about co-parenting and different things like that. But and it's a pointing the finger match. And it's like
Yeah.
what can I do to better this situation or to make the situation better, and leave it as that.
Yeah. For sure.
So before we let you get up out of here, Netta, I know it's been we've had a nice lengthy show. Let's talk a little bit about those workshops and those guides you got going on. Let's get to know a little bit more about what you do to help people move forward with these things that we've spoken about tonight.
Cool. Yeah, I was actually going to touch on some of the workshops I do. So, Project Mental Playground is like a project that I work on. Oops, who's texting me? Sorry. Pops up on my screen. But Project Mental Playground is a workshop that I'm doing in LA specifically. And so it's kind of dealing with a lot of the stuff that you all were talking about. Like, I think Truth was mentioning like what stops somebody from asking a girl out or a guy out or whatever, what makes people feel stuck, right? And so the whole aspect or point of Project Mental Playground is to get people unstuck. Because a lot of times they don't realize that they're stuck because of something that's going on with trauma, or they're stuck because of something that's going on with their nervous system. And their nervous system is literally making their body freeze. These ambulances hate me. The nervous system literally makes their body freeze. And so I use play to get people unstuck.
Mm. Okay.
Um, Play is a mixture of danger and safety, right? And so people are like, I don't want to move, it's dangerous. But if you add safety to it, then that's play. So I play with people in these workshops through like we'll like literally play games, and through that they'll learn how to connect with people, and they learn how to socialize, and that adds more safety so they can start building trust. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, I can trust more people, I can open up to more people. Like in my mind it makes sense. It's like this weird connection, but ultimately
That
uh
makes sense.
yeah, through play, people learn how to heal their trauma. And then my latest ebook right now is a tutorial on how to heal your emotional trauma in a sense, if you're an empath, right? So a lot of people who are empaths, like I said, they disconnect from people because they feel they isolate because they don't want to be drained. So I teach people how to basically heal their nervous system so they can stop getting drained, and they can
Mm.
protect themselves and they can connect with people without isolating.
I love
That was
that. I love
actually
that.
one of my issues is everybody wants to suck on my energy because of the I have the nonprofit where I deal with a lot of people who need, assistance with things. And then of course, you see, I host this. So clearly my goal is to just help people. So I've been finding my inbox, my phone. Um, actually, I'm gonna be honest. I have a longtime childhood friend who has been blowing me up, and she herself is really strung out on drugs.
Mm.
And I'm trying to figure out, like, this is an active situation. Like, this happened today. It's been happening. I cut her off, and I felt guilty for cutting her off because she is a childhood friend. But I had to set the boundary because I lost my mom to drugs. I had to set that boundary because it's a trigger. And today I got a slew of messages you can hardly comprehend. And I was being asked, like, I guess to help another drug addict find themselves. And immediately, when I was trying to read it and decipher it, I started feeling myself become like overly drained. And when I responded back, like trying to get a clear, coherent response, the person responded back and told me they were questioning my intelligence.
Mm.
Mm.
And I was just floored. I'm like, so I'm trying to help you and you're insulting me. And I realized, like, I have to find a balance for myself because, as the name is, Hood the Healer,
Mhm.
I'll cuss your ass out.
Right. I was gonna say, I don't know where you from. I would have said to her, I don't know where you from, but where I'm from, we don't do shit like that. I
Yep.
would ask you for my help.
See, I'm from the hood, and she knows me. She knows, it's no secret where I came from.
Yeah.
I have a reputation for putting my hands on people because I didn't know how to verbalize my emotions. The easiest thing I could do was just smack the taste out of your mouth.
Right.
And now listen, y'all, forgive me. I haven't been beating people up for like 10 years. Like I said, hood the healer. I went from being hood and now I'm trying to be a healer. Listen.
You went from you went from whipping ass to whipping shea butter.
I should.
I said,
But I was just sitting here and I'm like, there's got to be a way to find this balance because I know there's going to be more of this later. And it's going to come from people I don't know. And that's going to make it even worse because, I understand her situation right now. She's not there mentally. She's so
Yeah.
far gone on these drugs. I can I can rationalize an excuse to allow the behavior, which is really not good for somebody with my mental health diagnosis. I shouldn't rationalize an excuse for her behavior. But in order to stay level-headed and not react in a dangerous manner and be like, "Hey, listen, you're all kind of words that can be screenshotted and shared all over the internet." I
Mhm.
didn't respond. And I'm trying to find a way. And I think I'm gonna have to look into your stuff a little bit and figure it out because I'm trying to find a way to protect my energy because that's not good. That's not healthy. You shouldn't come to me for help. And then when I get clarity, cuss me out and tell me, like literally her words were, I'm questioning your intelligence. And I was floored.
Yeah.
excuse me.
Right.
I'm
People, I don't know. They just be kind of, yo. Sometimes people say the darndest things, you know. But yeah, I mean, I feel like your example kind of explains what I help people with. I can write like a whole book and then still not know how to explain it because I be in my mind so much. But yeah, like it just gives people the tools to like know how to deal with these types of people. And it also gives them the tools to learn how to find better people. Right. To be able to discern like, okay, I want this person in my life. I don't need this person in my life. Along with the healing too. Cause like you can heal all day, but if you're still allowing people to re-traumatize you or come back in your life and treat you all types of ways, then the healing is just kind of gonna only half help the situation, right? So you got to learn how to be able to discern like who you should allow around you and who you shouldn't.
That's good.
That's spot on, and that's why I said I shouldn't be rationalizing an excuse for somebody else's behavior, because
I
truthfully,
mean, I was gonna say, and not to cut you off, I
no,
wanted
go
to
ahead.
affirm you in that too and say like, okay, don't rationalize it, but it just shows me that you have empathy, right? And that's the beautiful part about people who go through like these situations is that out of it they end up having more empathy for other people because we live in a world where people just kind of don't care about other people anymore, and that's a survival mechanism. It's all about me, me, me. But people who go through traumatic situations, they generally have a lot of them have empathy, and that empathy is what's going to allow us to like love one another, right? It's just about having boundaries with that empathy, right? Like, okay, I can understand that like you're not trying to be a horrible person. I can understand that you have certain trauma, so that's why you're acting that way. But I also have the boundaries to say, all right, well, cool, I'm gonna love you from a distance.
Yeah.
See, This is why I created this show. This is right here, these moments right here. Cause I know Truth got a moment a little while ago where he was like, something clicked. And then that right there was something for me. So Netta, thank you. Thank you for being our first guest on the show.
First one
Yes.
Yes, we've done 5 shows prior to this, and we decided, well, I'm not even gonna lie, I randomly decided one night in Clubhouse that I was gonna have Netta as a guest. And
Oh,
this was like, boom, Truth, this is what's going on. We're changing the format of the show. We now got some guests coming on. It was because I heard the way she spoke and I knew she was gonna bring value to the people. And that's the whole point of Hood the Healer. We want to bring y'all value. We want y'all to understand it's okay to be hurt and it's okay to seek help. It really is. So many people, and Netta brought this up earlier. She touched on it very gently. I guess it's because I'm light skinned. She didn't want to be all black power on here or something. But
what?
we our focus is really to bring mental health to the black community. I am mixed. I grew up in a white household, but my mom told me at 4, she said, "You're not white." So I left white people at 4, y'all. Don't worry. I can just tell y'all about their problems, but I ain't one of them. I love them, but I ain't one of them. So I want the black community to stop feeling like they can't go to church and go to a therapist. Do both. Do both. I have somebody who recently judged me for saying universe instead of God. But
Mm.
I look at
Mhm.
them both the same. I talk to my universe, I talk to my God. Like, who are you to tell me my beliefs are any different? So the one thing I want y'all to get from coming to Hood the Healer is we don't care what you believe in as long as you're believing in yourself. As long as you're believing
Mm.
in getting better. That's it. If you can believe in any religion you want, you can have any sexual orientation you want, because I'm gayer than can be. I know Truth is a lesbian over there. I already know that man. He talks the most nonsense on social media, y'all. He is so we're not here to judge you. We just want y'all to grow with us. Cause as y'all hear, I'm still in therapy. I'm still growing. I'm not gonna quit growing. So
Yeah.
join us on the journey. Netta, let them know where they can find out and keep up with you.
Yeah, social media for sure. My Instagram, Neda the official, Neda the official, and then my website is nedaofficial.com for sure.
Absolutely.
Tap in, tap in. I thank you for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and your presence with us and with the world that's going to be tuning into the show.
And
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Truth, I need
Likewise.
you to do a shameless plug of what we got going on tomorrow. Let's let the people know what we got cooking up on Hip Hop Digital.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So on Hip Hop Digital, I had put out an album called "You Are God," and on Hip Hop Digital, I'm gonna be interviewed on there with my homegirl Kristy. She's the
Okay.
goat. She's the goat. She does everything. I'm inspired by her, and I'm just so honored to be in connection with her and growing with her. This is my people. She had came to me at a time where I had no sense of direction where I was gonna go in my career, and now my career is doing good, and I'm doing great in music, and I owe that to Christy. So she has multiple platforms. She's like wearing many different hats. So we doing this show, but on Hip Hop Digital, she'll be interviewing me.
Yeah, so thank you
Amen.
for the little plug. I appreciate it. So yes, go to hiphopdigital.com. Check out the interview I'm about to do with not only Young Truth, but I just interviewed Quincy Taylor, who he's done the street team work for Def Jam the last few years. So we're dropping gems on both platforms. Also, Save Our Families is still doing fundraising as we move into working on getting some actual therapists to come and donate some hours. We're gonna get a whole it's 11/11 truth. Look, we
11.
never fails. Every
Yeah,
show, 11/11.
yeah,
Every show.
We like to make sure by 11:11. That's when we don't leave until we see 11:11.
Right? That's what I had to carry
Oh
this. It's
wow.
our
Okay.
sign. It's our thing. It's our thing, man. It's just so we know it's a blessed show. God was here and he ordained this. You know what I'm saying? But no, for real. hiphopdigital.com, youngtruth.net, universeright.com, and then we
.net.
got Neda the Official. Everybody go check us out. I'm gonna link everything up with descriptions. I appreciate both of y'all. Let's stay in contact. Neda, if you ever need anything, hit me up.
From the streets of the Hamptons, piece of the mansion. I've been on the mission, take the knowledge for ransom. Had to free my mind, get a little expansion. Heard the healer, had to triple your chances. From the streets of the Hamptons, piece of the mansion. I've been on the mission, take the knowledge for ransom. Had to free my mind, get a little expansion. Heard the healer, had to triple your chances.